In 1990, Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop published an essay in which she argued that books can be windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. As an English teacher, it comes as no surprise that Bishop's work has been deeply influential in my classroom. Every fall, my freshmen set reading goals about these mirrors and windows. I want all my students to find a mirror book that reflects back to them some aspect of who they are, to reaffirm that their identity and experiences matter, and that they're not alone. I task them with seeking out a window, because while mirrors are necessary and important, too many mirrors can create a funhouse, which can quickly become an echo chamber. Students can become trapped by limited perspectives and confirmation bias. Windows push students to witness people, perspectives, and places which were previously foreign to them. I tell them that sliding glass doors are windows that require action. They require something more. Sliding glass doors are books that challenge and change you. It's not a passive glance out a window, but an active choice to cross a threshold and engage. The longer I teach, the more I think Bishop's analogy isn't just true of books, but of education more broadly. Students need to learn in communities that reflect back to them the things that matter and help strengthen their identities during this formative time in their lives. Mirrors will always be essential, but so too are windows. Education must provide students with viewpoints other than their own, and they must engage in work and grapple with ideas that do not neatly slot into their current experiences. They must be challenged to see the world in a different light through someone else's eyes and explore horizons they didn't know existed. As educators, we must pull back that curtain and let the light in. But just like with books, sliding glass doors in education are harder to come by. Windows and mirrors can often be experienced through passive exposure, but doors require engagement. I believe that curiosity is education's sliding glass door. When you're curious, you're more likely to be open-minded. You don't stop at acknowledging that you don't know something. You ask questions. How far down that rabbit hole one is willing to go to seek answers is often determined by the time and space we have that we can carve out in our lives. I believe we must carve out more space in our classrooms to help our students develop the skill of being curious. Curiosity is the foundation upon which education thrives. By the time my students are freshmen, many of them have lost their love of reading. When I ask them to list favorite books, they can only give me titles from elementary school. Once we start assigning them reading, a lot of them stop loving it. The same thing often happens to their curiosity. Weighed down by course loads and expectations, they leave curiosity behind to tend to their checklists. So this past year, I asked my students what they were curious about that had nothing to do with English class. We would chat about the things they saw on TikTok or heard in math class or what someone's dad shared at the dinner table. My sophomores wanted to know, and I quote, "How does ibuprofen take my pain away? How does technology affect our attitudes? How does Bluetooth work?" This practice of being curious took only about 10 minutes of class every few days. We learned so much about one another. We built incredible connections between our ideas, and we shared a lot of laughs. With no strings attached, my students were willing to engage fully. And once they got in the habit of flexing that curiosity muscle again, it started to naturally translate to the work that they were doing in English. My curriculum provided them mirrors and windows. It was our relationships to each other and the world around us that created the sliding glass doors. My students read more books when it was their friends recommending them. They grew as writers and as thinkers when they learned that giving feedback should be a conversation about their writing, not just a chain of comments in a Google Doc. They figured out their topics for their big research papers by sharing about what made them curious, and they grew as citizens by interviewing members of their community. When students become curious, they become more engaged in their communities, taking that desire to learn with them when they go to work or to babysit or to volunteer. They start seeing the world not as silos of information, but as an interconnected web of which they are a part. They read Animal Farm in social studies, and they start to connect it to Fahrenheit 451 in English. And then they start to wonder about book bans in their state and how school boards are supposed to work. When curiosity transcends the classroom, sliding glass doors become portals to the world beyond school. When confronted with a value or a viewpoint one doesn't agree with, it is easy to become defensive and confrontational and to shut down. But in a world guided by curiosity, we seek to understand rather than strive to be right. So how do we create more sliding glass doors in education? How do we help students take their experiences and their empathy and act on them? We must model being curious and thoughtful community members. Engagement, whether it's in coursework or community, requires curiosity. Schools and communities alike need to find ways to build stronger relationships rooted in this curiosity. We need to invite more people to engage in student learning, whether it's through classroom visits, field trips, or learning programs. Each school and each community can find their own ways to build and grow together, but for positive progress to be made, we must root our work with one another in our curiosity. In an ideal world, schools and communities offer one another both windows and mirrors. Bishop explains that when the lighting conditions are just right, a window can also be a mirror. Like one of my freshman boys who set a mirror goal to read about a teen basketball player, who turned and asked me during quiet reading, "Wait, is this also a window? I said I wanted to read a book about someone of a different race, and this main character is Ojibwe. I'm learning about life on the res." My wish is for all my students to have this moment of empathy and epiphany, where they see the overlap between their own reflection and the world beyond the window. If they're ready, if they're curious enough, this is the moment they open the door and cross the threshold. Schools need to take a page out of our students' books and become curious enough to ask how they can better serve their communities, best leverage the skills, talents, and stories of their communities, best support and grow alongside their communities. And communities in turn must not only embrace all that schools have to offer, but offer their resources, services, and time in return. Too often the exchange ends at tax dollars, when that should only be the beginning. And so I ask you, where might you be able to open a door? Educators, how can you invite community into your classroom? Community and business leaders, how can you invite students and teachers into your spheres? And how can we all seek support and guidance from governing bodies to help us in this work? Doors go both ways. You must be prepared to be both a welcoming host and a grateful guest. Inevitably, there will be days where this work to cross thresholds and build bridges seems too heavy or too hard. On these days, I encourage you to spend time gazing into the mirror and calling upon your inner strength. Then spend some time looking out the window until you find yourself good and curious. When you're ready, tap into that curiosity and open a door. Thank you.